And I saw two more, but I think we saw one of them the same film. So why don't you throw that one in?
Yeah, it's a movie called Northwest, which I think is probably my favorite that I saw.
I would agree.
I thought it was just it. At first, I feel like it took me. I think it was the first one I watched, so it took me a little while to connect to it, like to get plugged into the movie. But I think I really enjoyed what it was trying to say. What it was trying to do. Is it Danish?
I think so. That's what I got. That's what I thought it was.
It's Danish. You sort of come to learn that there's this young man. He's 19 years old. He is trying just to make a life for himself and his family. You can kind of tell that he's sort of the man of the family. He's got a mother, a really young sister, and a brother who's 17.
Somewhere
I think there's 2 years between them. And so he is like a small-time burglar.
Yeah.
Steals things, sells them to this guy.
He steals like small stereos
Right.
and, he breaks into people's houses and steals whatever he can carry and that's it.
Yeah, essentially he just breaks in the middle of the day when they're not home. He's not doing it at night. He's doing it in the middle of the day, puts it in his truck, drives off, pulls up into this, storage shed, sells it to this guy who doesn't ever give him a good deal, it seems. And, of course, there's friction there.
Yeah.
So then he finds out about this other guy who does the same thing but on a larger scale, who has a couple more other enterprises involved, like, prostitution and stuff like that. So he starts working for this other guy. And, of course, the friction that was was with the smaller time crook, head guy, that sort of comes to a point to where that clashes, and then he's got some new problems that he's learned, getting with this new boss, and then he's got to go back to his family and explain certain things, and his mom's kind of like, "That's a nice watch," and he's just like, "Oh yeah," and she knows, but she doesn't say anything because he's putting food on the table, that kind of thing, and he's got this friend who is completely inept, can't do much of anything, that goes on these robberies with him. Then he loops his brother into it, and I thought was kind of an interesting circumstance.
And I mean, one of the things I loved about this movie was it didn't follow the standard gangster film tropes.
Right.
It made it seem like it was, but then it would twist and turn and be like, oh no, this isn't Goodfellas.
Right. This isn't glamorous.
Exactly.
And really becomes a morality piece very obviously at a certain point in the movie, and does something that I never have seen in a crime film.
Oh, yeah.
A particular thing that happens when he has to try to decide if he wants to kill this guy or not. I was very whoa.
Yeah.
That's happening.
Yeah.
All right. Good job, movie. I bought it,
Oh, yeah. And the whole film is just kind of about how, could you really be a gangster? It seems like a lot of fun to be the guy in charge, but can you really be that person who will just kill somebody in cold blood just because another guy told you to kill him?
Right. When it starts off small, he's still stealing stuff, and he gets to shop the girls around, and he takes the girls to these parties, and where it's all fun and games.
And he gets to be the tough guy and be like, "Hey, you stay away from her," and
give me the money, and But then when it comes to actual criminal activity, like dealing drugs, smuggling them, still dealing with this other guy that won't leave him alone. It's just it's an interesting triangle of sorts that plays out. I will say I did groan at the ending.
Yeah.
The ending happened and I was like, oh, well, come on. Normally my type of ending, but hindsight is always 20/20, and I'm forgiving of the ending because it doesn't look good for him regardless. Regardless if you think certain things went down a certain way, it just doesn't, it's not going to end well for him regardless.
He's not okay for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, worth checking out. I think
very good.
It's an indie movie, but it at times doesn't feel like one.
Yeah.
I thought they found a really good balance at sort of making it seem bigger.
Yeah. Well, what was interesting was last year at Chicago, we saw Black's Game, which was a straight up Goodfellas film.
I will say I enjoyed this one way more than that.
And I liked Black's Game a lot. I thought it did a good job of being that Goodfellas film. And when I started watching this one, I thought, okay, this is going to follow the same pattern. And when it didn't, that was when I was like, oh,
yeah,
that's amazing. It's hard not to compare. That's a great way to do that. Yeah.
So I would be curious to know if I would still enjoy it as much without having that one in my my history. But I do think it does a lot of interesting, maybe not quite original, but just interesting things with the characters to sell it to you. Because this teenager, I mean, he's still a teenager, obviously trying to be a man, but when he's brought back to sort of that teenage level, he can't handle it. And his brother also going through the same thing alongside him. It's just an interesting parallel because they almost paint it as they're almost clones of each other. They both have very short haircuts. They both wear the same clothes. Obviously, same background, brought up the same way. It sort of like brings him up to a level and then brings the brother up very quickly to it, and then which one is going to survive. So I thought that was an interesting parallel to paint as the story moved along. So I really enjoyed it. I'd say it was probably my favorite of the stuff that I was able to catch before today.
Yeah, I would agree. And we'll probably keep A Place for Film is recorded at WFIU Studios in Bloomington, Indiana.